Welcome to the Deep Dive. We've got a fascinating one today, Becoming Human by Michael Tomasello. And yeah, this book, it really digs into what makes us humans different from our primate cousins.
It's amazing how Tomasello combines developmental psychology and primatology to really explore this question. Focusing on how human children develop in these unique ways compared to other great apes.
Exactly. And he doesn't just, describe the differences. He goes deep into why those differences matter. His argument is that it all comes down to our capacity for shared intentionality.
Yeah, it's not just about being smart as individuals. It's about how we evolved to be so cooperative, to communicate, and to build these shared understandings of the world around us.
Okay, so let's unpack this shared intentionality. It seems like the key to understanding Tomasello's whole argument.
Well, he says it develops in two main steps. The first is what he calls joint intentionality. That's where we learn to work together towards a shared goal, understanding each other's roles. Think of early humans hunting together. They had to coordinate their actions, trust each other's intentions, and then share what they caught.
It's like a mental dance, right? Being in sync, not just physically, but also in terms of what you're trying to achieve together.
Exactly. And that dance is what sets the stage for the second step, collective intentionality. This is where we go beyond just two people cooperating. We start to participate in shared beliefs, norms, and practices. It's the foundation of culture.
So things like language wouldn't be possible without this collective intentionality, right? How to structure sentences, all those complex rules.
Exactly. Tomasello uses language as a prime example of how collective intentionality really sets us apart. We're not just imitating sounds. We're tapping into this whole system of shared meaning that's built up over generations.
It's like we're all plugged into this invisible network of shared understanding that's pretty mind-blowing. But how do we get there developmentally? Tomasello seems to think joint attention is really important.
Let's start with collaborative foraging. Unlike chimpanzees, who mostly forage individually, early humans likely relied on collaborative foraging strategies to obtain food. This involved coordinating their actions, communicating about food sources, and sharing the spoils of their efforts.
So it's not just about finding food.
Right.
It's about working together to get it.
Precisely. And this requires a shared understanding of the task,
Right.
the roles each individual plays, and the ultimate goal of obtaining food for the group.
Okay.
Now, pointing and other gestures provide further evidence of shared intentionality. Early humans likely used pointing to direct attention to food sources or potential dangers,
Right.
which again points to an understanding of shared goals and the need to communicate effectively.
That's fascinating. It seems like even simple acts like pointing reveal a deeper level of cognitive sophistication than we see in other primates.
Exactly. And this brings us to another crucial aspect of human development.
Okay.
The 9-month revolution.
Ah, yes. The 9-month revolution.
Yes.
I remember reading about that.
Yeah.
It has something to do with infants developing joint attention, right?
That's right around 9 months of age.
Okay.
Human infants begin to display joint attention,
Uh-huh.
which is the ability to share attention and interest with another person towards a third object or event.
So it's like when a baby points at a toy and looks back at you as if to say, look at this cool thing.
Precisely. But it's more than just pointing.
Yeah.
It's the understanding that we are both looking at this together and finding it interesting.
Okay.
This triadic interaction
Yeah.
involving the infant, the adult, and the shared object of attention marks a significant shift in cognitive development.
It sounds like a pivotal moment.
Yes.
But haven't babies been interacting with their caregivers before 9 months?
Right.
What exactly changes at this point?
Before 9 months, interactions are primarily dyadic,
Okay.
meaning they're focused on the relationship between the baby and the caregiver.
Wow.
However, with the emergence of joint attention,
Right.
the focus expands to include a third element, creating a shared experience.
So it's like they're moving from me and you to me, you, and this thing we're both focused on.
Exactly. And this seemingly simple shift has profound implications for language development, social learning, and the understanding of other minds.
Wow. I'm starting to see how all of this connects.
Think of a baby pointing at a toy. They're not just trying to get your attention. They're inviting you to share their focus, to see the object from their perspective.
And that's different from how, say, a chimpanzee might interact with an object, right? They might point to get something they want, but not necessarily to share an experience.
Exactly. Tomasello argues that this seemingly simple act of joint attention is actually a foundation for all sorts of complex human skills, like language acquisition and social learning.
So we're not just born with this shared intentionality preloaded. It emerges through these early interactions.
It's this fascinating interplay of nature and nurture. We're born with the capacity for shared intentionality, but it's our social environment that really makes it grow.
And that social environment is pretty different for human children compared to other primates.
Tomasello emphasizes how human children grow up in a super cooperative environment. They depend on adults for food and information for much longer than chimps do.
So this extended period of dependence, that's actually a key ingredient in how we develop.
Think about it. Unlike great ape mothers who wean their young at around 4 or 5 years old, human children receive care and food from multiple adults, fathers, grandmothers, even friends for a much longer time. This cooperative breeding fuels our social and cognitive development in ways that you just don't see in other primates.
That's like evolution is saying, hey, humans, you're going to need to be really good at cooperating to survive and thrive.
And this need to cooperate goes beyond just basic survival. It shapes how we learn, how we communicate, even how we develop a sense of morality.
So it's not just about getting food on the table. It's about becoming fully human. This is where it gets really interesting. Tomasello argues that human children don't just imitate actions. They actually try to understand the meaning behind those actions.
It's about understanding the why behind the what. He calls this cultural learning, and he points to 2 key mechanisms that make it possible: role reversal imitation and pedagogy.
Okay, I'm intrigued. Let's break those down. What exactly is role reversal imitation?
It's about understanding the different roles people play in an interaction, not just copying the actions. For example, a child might see an adult comforting another child. Later, they might comfort a friend who's crying, showing they understand the roles and reasons behind caregiving.
So they're not just mimicking the action of hugging, they're getting the meaning of it, the intention behind it.
Exactly. And this ability to understand intentions is so important for understanding those subtle social interactions and cultural norms. It lets children learn from other people's experiences and take part in the shared practices of their community.
It's like they're these little anthropologists in the making, always observing, interpreting, and applying social information in ways that other primates just don't.
And then there's pedagogy, the way humans actively teach each other. Unlike other primates, we don't just learn by trial and error. We learn from each other's experiences and instructions.
So we're hardwired not only to cooperate, but to share knowledge and help each other learn. That's pretty unique to our species.
Tomasello points out how incredibly receptive children are to this kind of teaching. They don't just learn how to use a specific tool, for example. They grasp the general idea of tool use and apply that to other things.
Like they can extract the logic of an action, not just the specific steps. That's a big cognitive leap.
And this ability to think abstractly and generalize is key for cultural learning and passing knowledge down through generations. It's a driving force behind human progress.
So we've established that humans are ultra-cooperative. We do this unique cultural learning thing. But how does this all connect back to our sense of morality?
That's where things get even more interesting. Tomasello suggests that even our sense of fairness isn't something we're born with. It develops through these collaborative experiences.
So it's not just nature, it's nurture too.
When children work together towards a common goal, they start to see the value in everyone contributing equally and sharing their rewards. It lays the foundation for a sense of justice and a moral code.
So 2 kids pulling a rope together to get a prize are more likely to share fairly than if they just found the prize already split up. It's about that experience of collaborating, putting in the effort together that creates that sense of fairness.
Precisely. And as children grow, they internalize the social norms of their group and develop a moral identity, a sense of what's right and wrong based on those shared values. They go from simply following rules to actually enforcing them, showing that they understand social norms are bigger than just what they personally want.
It's like they go from me to we in how they think about right and wrong.
Exactly. And that we perspective, that ability to step outside our own individual viewpoint and think about the group. That's a crucial part of Tomasello's theory. He argues that this is what ultimately allows for these complex human societies to emerge.
Okay, so we've covered a lot here, from joint attention to cultural learning to morality, and it's clear that shared intentionality is the thread connecting it all. But there's so much more to explore.
Absolutely. Tomasello goes beyond just describing these differences in development.
Mm-hmm.
He digs into the specific cognitive skills that make shared intentionality possible. In the next part, we'll dive into how things like understanding perspectives, reasoning about beliefs, and grasping that there's a difference between subjective and objective reality all contribute to our unique capacity for social and moral reasoning.
Sounds like we're about to get into some serious mind-bending territory.
Welcome back. We've been talking about how this idea of shared intentionality really shapes how humans develop from those early interactions all the way to our understanding of morality.
You know, it's pretty amazing how much Tomasello's work emphasizes just how important collaboration is to making us human.
Absolutely. It's not just about being social creatures. It's about how this deep-seated drive to cooperate actually shapes our cognitive abilities. In fact, Tomasello has a whole chapter where he analyzes how human children develop these unique collaborative skills that really set them apart from other primates.
Okay, I'm all ears. What makes human collaboration so special?
Well, Tomasello points out that even young children, unlike chimpanzees, are capable of forming a joint goal and understanding their own roles in reaching that goal.
So it's not just about working alongside someone. It's about getting that you're working together towards something you both want, like like two gears in a machine. Each has a specific part to make the whole thing work.
Exactly. And Tomasello argues that this understanding is deeply rooted in our capacity for shared intentionality. It needs you to be able to see things from another person's point of view, to understand their intentions, and to coordinate your actions with theirs.
He uses a really cool example to illustrate this point. The rope pulling experiment. You know, the one where two people have to work together to pull a rope and get a reward?
Yes, that's a great example. Tomasello talks about research showing that even 3-year-old kids can successfully work together in this task, even when the reward is set up in a way that they have to share it.
Wow, it's impressive. But I remember reading that chimps struggle with this, especially when it's time to share the goodies. It's like their teamwork falls apart when they have to split the rewards.
Exactly. Tomasello highlights how chimps tend to approach these tasks with a more me-first attitude. They're focused on getting as much as they can for themselves, even if it means messing up the whole collaboration.
It's like they haven't quite grasped the idea that we can achieve more together than any one of us can alone. Whereas human children seem to have this almost natural drive towards fairness and sharing, especially when they've worked together to get something.
That's right. And Tomasello suggests that this sense of fairness isn't something we're simply born with. It comes from our experiences of working together. It's through actually cooperating, understanding each other's contributions, and sharing the rewards that kids develop this idea of being fair.
So it's not just about the end result, it's about the process of working together that shapes our moral development. Figuring things out as a team that seems to build that understanding of fairness.
Precisely. And Tomasello goes on to explain how this early sense of fairness, which is cultivated through collaboration, evolves into a more complex understanding of social norms and moral principles.
It's like that saying, it takes a village. We need those early experiences of cooperating and figuring things out to understand the rules of the game. He talks about a difference between what he calls second-person norms and just general social norms, right?
Yes. He uses second person to talk about those norms that come directly from our interactions with other people. Think about simple things like sharing toys or taking turns in a game. It's about treating each other with respect, keeping promises, and making sure things are fair within that context of working together.
So it's like an unspoken agreement between people who are trying to achieve a shared goal. We learn to follow the rules because we see that it helps us keep those relationships strong and get things done together.
Exactly. And Tomasello argues that this is a really important step towards understanding those broader social rules that guide how we act in larger groups.
It's like we're building up our moral muscles, starting with those one-on-one interactions and then expanding outwards to understand the rules that make society work. He talks about how human children, unlike other primates, develop this deep understanding of social norms and even become like active enforcers of them. I've definitely seen that with my own kids.
That's so interesting. He points out how kids will protest when they see someone breaking a rule, even if it doesn't affect them directly. It's like they get that these norms are important for keeping things fair and making sure society runs smoothly.
They're like little guardians of the social contract.
Yeah.
And this is where that idea of collective intentionality really comes in, right? It's about seeing ourselves as part of a bigger group and realizing that we all have a responsibility to uphold those norms that hold us together.
Absolutely. And Tomasello suggests that this group-minded perspective, this ability to think in terms of we instead of just me, that's a crucial element of what makes us moral beings. It allows us to move past just looking out for ourselves and start acting in ways that benefit the whole group.
This we perspective, this moral compass, it's not something that just pops up one day. Tomasello takes us through how this moral understanding grows over time, starting with those early experiences of working together.
Yes, he says that young children first understand social norms as something that grown-ups make them follow. They see rules as coming from some authority figure, and they obey because they respect that authority, or maybe even fear getting punished.
But as they get older, something changes.
Yeah.
It's like those social norms become part of them, and they start to see it as their own job to make sure everyone follows them. They go from just following rules to actually enforcing them, and then finally to understanding the real reasons behind those rules.
Exactly. And Tomasello argues that this is a super important change. It means shifting from just blindly following rules to actually getting why they exist and why they're valuable for everyone getting along.
It's like they're not just memorizing a bunch of do's and don'ts. They're developing a much deeper understanding of the values and ideas behind those rules.
Mhm.
And this understanding grows even more when they interact with other kids their own age, right? It's not just about what adults tell them. It's also about figuring things out with other kids on their own level.
Exactly. Tomasello emphasizes how important those collaborative experiences with other kids are for developing this deeper understanding of social norms. They're on a more equal footing with their peers, so they have to negotiate the roles and solve conflicts together.
It's amazing to think that those little arguments kids have over toys and games are actually helping them build a better understanding of morality and justice.
And Tomasello says that all these experiences of collaboration, fairness, and making sure people follow the rules ultimately lead to the development of a moral identity.
This is where things get really interesting. He's not just talking about knowing the difference between right and wrong. It's about developing a sense of who we are as moral people. It's like our moral code becomes part of us shaping how we act and what motivates us.
It's about becoming the kind of person who wants to do the right thing. And that shapes everything we do.
He says this moral identity is what helps us make tough choices,
Yeah.
resist doing things we know are wrong, and even act in ways that might cost us something, because we feel like it's our duty to do what's right.
Exactly. It's about developing that strong inner voice that guides us even when we're tempted to do something else or when other people are pressuring us. It's what gives us the strength to stand up for what we believe in, even when it's difficult.
And this sense of duty, this feeling that we have to do what's right, Tomasello connects that directly to our ability for shared intentionality. It's not just a coincidence that we're both ultra-cooperative and deeply moral creatures. These two things are linked.
It's a really powerful idea, and it highlights how much our cognitive, social, and moral development are all intertwined. We can't understand human morality without understanding how we cooperate. And we can't understand how we cooperate without understanding this unique human capacity for shared intentionality.
So Tomasello has taken us on quite a journey from those first moments of joint attention all the way to the complex world of moral identity. But I feel like we've just scratched the surface. There's still so much to explore in terms of how all of this actually works in our minds.
Oh, absolutely. He dives even deeper into the cognitive side of shared intentionality. He looks at how our ability to understand perspectives, how we reason about what other people believe, and how we grasp the difference between subjective and objective reality all contribute to our unique capacity for social and moral reasoning.
And this is where we really see the problems with those traditional theories of cognitive development, right? They tend to look at a child learning all alone, figuring things out in isolation. But Tomasello argues that we just can't truly understand how human minds work without considering how social our development is. We're not just brains in a jar. We're brains that are wired to connect, communicate, and work together.
Exactly. He makes a strong argument for a more sociocultural approach to cognitive development, one that recognizes how crucial shared intentionality is in shaping how we think.
This is definitely making me question some long-held ideas about learning and thinking. It's changing my whole understanding of human nature.
And it's not just theory. Tomasello uses tons of research to back up his ideas. He draws on both developmental psychology and primatology. He's not just guessing. He's building his argument on solid evidence.
And he's not afraid to get into the details of experiments and data analysis. It's clear he's really committed to doing good science.
And yet he manages to present all this complicated stuff in a way that's really engaging and makes you think. He doesn't shy away from tough questions, and he's always open to different points of view. It's not like he's preaching. He's inviting you to really think deeply about these big questions.
He's definitely a master at weaving together theory research and philosophical ideas. It's impressive how he makes such a dense topic so easy to understand and interesting.
And I think the most amazing thing about Tomasello's work is what it means for us. It's not just about how kids develop. It's about what it means to be human.
It's about recognizing how powerful collaboration is, how important it is to have shared values, and that potential for moral progress that's at the core of who we are. It's like a hopeful message. It reminds us that we're not just selfish individuals fighting over resources. We can work together, care for each other, and build a better world.
And I think it also makes us ask some important questions about how to best help those capacities grow in children. If shared intentionality is so crucial for human development, how do we create environments that encourage these skills and help kids thrive as cooperative moral people?
Those are excellent questions. And I bet Tomasello has some ideas about that. Maybe we should check out some of his other work and see what he says about education and child development. It seems like his insights have a lot of practical uses that go way beyond just research.
I'm totally in. I'm always ready for another deep dive, especially when it comes to understanding the mysteries of human nature.
Welcome back to the Deep Dive. We've been spending some time with Michael Tomasello's Becoming Human, exploring this idea that shared intentionality really sets us apart from other primates.
It's fascinating, isn't it? This ability to not only understand that others have different thoughts, but to actually grasp that those thoughts could be wrong. That's a pretty big step cognitively.
Totally. And in this final part, I'm really interested in how kids go from simply recognizing different perspectives to actually grappling with the idea that there's a shared objective reality out there.
Tomasello calls this the development of collective intentionality. It's moving beyond just trying to mesh together individual viewpoints and instead recognizing that there's a world out there that exists whether we're looking at it or not.
Hold on, how do you get to an objective view by combining a bunch of subjective ones? That seems kind of backwards.
Think of it like social triangulation. Tomasello suggests that by doing things over and over where we have to reconcile different perspectives, like kids arguing over the rules of a game, we start to understand that there's a reality that exists outside of our own heads.
So imagine a group of kids building with Legos. They might disagree about where each block goes, but by talking it out and compromising, they eventually build something that works, something that stands on its own, whether they like it or not.
Exactly. That process of negotiating and compromising, figuring out a shared understanding that goes beyond anyone's initial idea, that's key to developing an appreciation for objectivity. It's through these interactions that kids start to understand there's a right way to build the tower, a truth that's out there, regardless of what they personally think.
So they're discovering that truth isn't just a matter of opinion. It's something you work out together, test against the real world, and ultimately agree on as a group. That's a pretty big lesson to learn.
And Tomasello argues that this understanding of a shared reality is deeply tied to how we develop language.
So language becomes the tool we use to put that shared understanding into words.
Exactly. Language gives us this incredible tool for representing this reality we all share. It lets us talk about things that aren't right in front of us, to express abstract ideas, and to think about the world in a more objective way.
It's like language provides us with a set of blueprints for building a model of the world that we can all work with. We compare notes, debate different interpretations, and in the end, we come up with a richer, more detailed understanding than any of us could on our own.
Precisely. And this shared understanding, which we build through language and collaboration, it's the foundation for culture. It's our ability to talk about beliefs, norms, and ways of doing things that allows us to create those complex social structures that define human societies.
We're not just a bunch of random people bumping into each other.
Yeah.
We're a collective, connected by this shared understanding of how things work, what matters, and what we're all trying to achieve. But let's be real. This whole transition to collective intentionality, it's not always smooth sailing, is it? Kids can be pretty stubborn.
You're absolutely right. Tomasello acknowledges that there are definitely bumps along the way. He points out that young kids often go through a stage where they think their perspective is the only right one. That classic my way or the highway stage.
They assume everyone sees things the same way they do. Their perspective is the only perspective. This is where those classic experiments about understanding that other people can have false beliefs come in, right? Like the one where a kid has to realize that someone else can believe something that isn't true.
Exactly. Remember that experiment where you hide a toy while one child is watching and then another child comes in? The first kid often insists that the second kid will know where the toy is, even though they couldn't possibly know. That's a perfect example of how kids struggle to wrap their heads around the fact that other people's minds can have totally different ideas about reality.
It's like they haven't quite figured out that our thoughts are separate from the world. What we think is true isn't always what actually is true. And that can lead to some pretty funny and sometimes frustrating misunderstandings.
Tomasello argues that when kids have trouble with this task, it's not just a cognitive thing. It actually reflects a deeper social and moral challenge.
So it's not just about understanding how minds work, it's also about navigating those tricky social situations where people have different beliefs.
He says that to recognize the possibility of false beliefs, we have to accept that other people can be wrong. And that can be tough to swallow, especially for little kids who are still figuring out who they are and where they fit in.
It's like they're forced to confront the fact that what they know might not be the whole story,
Hmm.
and to grapple with this idea that there are many ways to see the world, and some are more accurate than others.
And Tomasello says that wrestling with this idea, that's actually a really important part of developing as social and moral beings. It's through these challenges that we learn to value seeing things from other people's perspectives, to really consider other viewpoints, and to engage in thoughtful discussions where we can all learn something.
It's about becoming humble about what we know and respecting other people's opinions, even when we disagree. It's what allows us to have productive conversations, to learn from each other, and to work together towards the things we all want.
Exactly. And Tomasello says that those qualities are essential for navigating all the complexities of human social life. They're the foundation for a society that values collaboration, empathy, and the pursuit of truth.
So we've come full circle back to that idea that shared intentionality isn't just about getting things done or reaching goals. It's about building a shared understanding of the world, a shared set of morals, and ultimately a shared sense of what it means to be human. It allows us to see ourselves as part of something bigger, something that goes beyond our own individual viewpoints.
It's such an insightful idea, and I think it changes how we think about everything from education and politics to how we interact with each other. It challenges us to look beyond our own selfish desires and consider the needs and perspectives of everyone else.
If we really understand the power of shared intentionality, it pushes us to create environments that foster collaboration, encourage seeing things from different angles, and value all the diverse ways that people think.
It's a call to action to build a world where we recognize that we're all connected and work together to create a more just and fair society. It reminds us that our greatest strength as humans lies in our ability to cooperate, to learn from one another, and to build something better together.
Wow, this has been a truly deep dive. Tomasello's Becoming Human has given us so much to think about. It's a challenging read, but it's full of insights that make us question what we think we know about being human.
It's definitely a book that sticks with you. It makes you see even those everyday interactions between people in a new light. You realize just how complex our social and cognitive abilities really are.
And it leaves us feeling hopeful. With this belief in the power of shared intentionality to create a better future for ourselves and for generations to come. It reminds us that we're not just puppets of our genes or our environment. We have the power to shape our own destiny and to build a world that reflects the best of humanity.
So keep those conversations going, keep questioning, keep collaborating. That's how we truly become human, by embracing what we share and working together to create a brighter future.
Thanks for joining us on this deep dive. We'll catch you next time on the Deep Dive.